¿Qué tal?
Hola, hola
Otro.
amigo, ¿cómo vamos? ¿Cómo vamos?
¿Qué tal, pastor? Muy bien, amigo. Espero que también todo esté bien por allá.
Todo genial, todo genial. Un día muy bonito, muy hermoso, ¿verdad? Y sobre todo una nueva experiencia en Latino NET.
Es correcto. El día de hoy estamos haciendo algo especial. Estamos haciendo algo que creo que va a beneficiar el área de Latinoamérica. Varias veces lo he establecido y lo hemos platicado un poco. Estar en el área de IT muchas veces nos requiere del hablar el inglés, ¿no? Entonces, el día de hoy vamos a estar teniendo una presentación en inglés. ¿Cómo ves, pastor?
Sí,
¿Qué
sí, sí.
opinión te merece esto?
Para mí que está genial, ¿verdad? Y habíamos en Latino NET hecho un evento Blazer for All en el cual la primera parte pues, del intro del evento, ¿verdad? La había dado una persona de Inglaterra. Ya, pero es
¿Es
la primera
correcto?
vez que un webinar en sí va a
Es
ser todo en
correcto.
inglés y nada más y nada menos que por Iris Classon, pues,
Es
¿verdad?
correcto. Sí.
Que, que-
Y antes de hacer la presentación, pastor, ¿alguna novedad que hayas tenido que hayas leído durante esta semana eh, del área
sinceramente,
de .NET?
sinceramente no tuve el tiempo esta semana, pero sí quiero felicitar a alguien que hace poquito me di cuenta, ya sabe a quién, ¿verdad?
Hay varias personas, no sé, dime.
Comienza con P su nombre.
Sí, definitivamente, que lo
Definitivamente.
tendremos precisamente el próximo mes.
No, este mes, ya estamos en,
Este
en,
mes,
en abril, sí, sí,
es correcto, sí,
sí,
cierto.
sí, ya
Ya es
estamos hablando de
abril,
abril.
tienes razón, ya es abril. ¿Cómo pasa el tiempo? Sí, lo vamos a tener por acá. Platícanos por qué lo estás felicitando.
Porque hoy, hace poquito, me di cuenta, ¿verdad? Que ya le dieron el MVP. Qué
Es
genial,
correcto,
dije yo,
sí.
¿verdad? Su nombre
Pablito,
es
estamos hablando de
Pablo
Pablito.
Piovano, sí,
Pablo.
correcto, para que los que no sepan de quién estamos hablando, ¿verdad? Pablo Piovano es de Argentina y es alguien muy participativo, ya. Incluso, pues, va a ser el primer webinar que él va a tener acá, pero participa bastante, ya sea o de espectador o compartiendo algún artículo que él escribió en su blog. Lo comparte, pues, en el chat de Latino NET Online y más que contento de ver que Pablito alcanzó ese logro.
Vamos a tener la dicha de que estrene ese logro en
En
LatinoNet. Ya
Latino
le
NET.
ponía yo en su publicación que puso en LinkedIn, que vamos a tener la fortuna de que nos estrene su reconocimiento con nosotros. Y pues muchas felicidades, Pablito. Normalmente no nos escribe en los saludos, parece ser que no está por acá el día de hoy, pero estoy seguro que va a ver la grabación. Entonces, una felicitación y un abrazo, Pablo. Bien merecido.
Sí.
Vamos rápido. Yo no tuve bueno, sí tengo mucha información, pero resulta que no la puedo publicar. Esta
Ujú,
semana tuvimos el MVP Summit,
ujú, ujú.
donde estuvimos reunidos todos los MVPs. Tenemos un evento anual. Bueno, ellos tienen un evento anual donde nos platican todas las novedades, todo lo que viene para los próximos meses, para los próximos años sobre las diferentes tecnologías. Muchísima información. Poco a poco, según nos vayan dando autorización, todos los MVPs vamos a seguir hablando sobre ello, pero se vienen cosas muy interesantes, muy, muy interesante. Fue mi primer MVP Summit, muy interesante. Todavía fue virtual. Usualmente antes de la pandemia lo hacían en Seattle y la gente iba a Seattle. Tenía yo mucha esperanza de poder ir, pero pues seguimos haciéndolo virtual. Entonces nos quedamos con la información. Muy interesante. Entonces estuve muy enfocado en esa parte y tampoco es que haya habido mucha información nueva o no, news, noticias sobre .NET. Si alguien conoce de alguna noticia, por favor pónganla en el chat. Y vamos rápido antes de hacer la presentación de Iris. A los saludos, dice Carlos Iván, buenos días. Ronald Pérez dice por acá, buenos días. Elliot Anderson, buenas. Alexis Caballero, buenos días a todos. Saludos desde Colombia. Muy bien. Pastor, ¿te parece si damos la introducción a nuestra speaker el día de hoy?
Adelante, adelante, por
Vamos a
supuesto que
hacer
sí.
un switch. Ya lo habíamos dicho, vamos a hablar en inglés, vamos a hacer un switch. Then we are going to switch to English just to do a presentation about Iris. Hi, Iris, how you doing?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. Buenos días.
You got it.
You get it, yeah.
Buenos días, yeah.
It sounds pretty good.
Exactly.
That's all that.
Yeah.
Yo quiero un cerveza, por favor. ¿Cervezas or cerveza?
Cerveza. without
Singular
S.
is cerveza, plural is cervezas.
Cervezas.
Correct. So it is. You live in Sweden, Suecia.
Yep. I'm a Sweden.
You are a citizen, and you are Microsoft MVP. 2
Yes,
years
I am.
ago, you were in the board director of the .NET Foundation, right?
Yeah, I used to be. Then I stepped down. Now I'm a member of the nomination committee every year, and that's the .NET Foundation took a lot of time. And I just had my second child. He's 5 months old. You know, you can see behind me. I was going to clean it up. This is
Actually, it looks good. It looks cool. I love trains when I was a kid.
I don't have time for the .NET Foundation, not all year around. I can do it around in spring and summer, but yeah, it takes a lot of time. But it was very interesting because it was very early on as well. So we didn't really know what we were doing, not 100%. So it was nice helping out, sort of, or get organized and everything. You know, it's much better, but there's still room for improvement, like everybody knows. So if anybody wants to help out, join. You should be a candidate for this year's elections.
Before going into your session, we would like to know a little bit about Iris. Has you been in any place in Latin America?
No, I haven't. I always wanted to, but I haven't.
Definitely, Latin America is some place that you can visit. There is a lot of places where natural places, but the more important thing is about the people. People in Latam is so welcoming, so you will feel so welcoming wherever you go in any place in Latam.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends over there, but I've never had the chance to travel there because I always feel like it's not a place you can just go over the weekend.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
a short trip. It's not like a short shopping trip to New York if anybody does that. I mean, if you go there, you stay for a while. You know, you stay for a few weeks, you get fat, then you go home. It's like visiting my family in Romania. There's no chance I go there just for 1 week and I don't come home like 5 kilos heavier. I love food, so I would go there just to eat.
Exactly, food in Latin America is great.
Swedish food is so boring. It's ridiculous.
Really?
It's very boring. Salt and pepper. That's like the main spices we use here. So.
Okay. No, you should come and try also food.
Oh yes.
People, food, and also places.
Yeah.
Latin America is great about it. Another thing, you are very active on the social networks. Besides your technical profile, you are like a sport woman, something like that. You also run. Have you ever run a marathon and that kind of thing?
Yes, I have. I even managed to be the last person during a marathon in Poland.
What? The last person?
I was there at the conference, speaking at the conference, and a friend of mine who lives there was like, "Hey, Iris, you like to run?" And I was like, "Yes." We were drinking beer, and that's when you get all the bad ideas. And he said, "Oh, there's a marathon tomorrow. Do you want to join?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." And then I don't remember this, but he calls my room early in the morning. He's like, "Iris, we're waiting downstairs. Put on your gym clothes." And I thought that we had planned to go to the gym. So I come downstairs, but no, we're running a marathon, which I had forgotten I agreed to. And then I injured my knee at around 20 kilometers, but I didn't want to give up. So for 7 more kilometers, I was like jumping on the leg until the police car was driving behind me, and they said something Polish on the speaker. And my friend started laughing, and I asked him, "What did they say?" He was like, "Well, they said, give up. You're not going to make it."
And you make it, and you made it.
No, I didn't. They had me sign these papers that I was no longer in the race because they were driving behind me to open up the streets so the cars could drive again.
Yeah. Wow. And you also swim on.
But I'm not good at it. I do triathlons now. That's my thing.
Wow. And
So
another thing that
I'm not fast. I'm not good. I just like doing things. So.
Exactly. And another thing that amazes me is that you swim on frozen lakes in Sweden.
Wow.
You
lakes?
swim You swim on frozen lakes.
Yes, I do.
That's cool. That's quite a challenge.
Amazing. Exactly.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I used to won a couple of competitions in swimming, but I mean, on frozen lake, that's kind of wow.
But that's
Yeah.
like the temperature here in Sweden is not. I promise there are good reasons to come to Sweden, but warm temperatures and food is not it.
Definitely.
There are other reasons.
Awesome. Perfect. So you will be talking about Azure Cognitive Services.
Yes.
Can you extend a little bit just as an introduction about it, please?
Yeah. So I'm going to talk about Azure Cognitive Services. I really like Azure. I was on board with the Azure thing from the start, but one of the things that really, really interested me was Azure Cognitive Services, because when I started learning programming 10 years ago, can't believe it's been 10 years, I was really interested in alternative input methods, like applications that let the user interact with the application in different ways than the normal ways. And I had a Windows Phone because I loved Windows Phone and I was convinced it was the future. I was one of those people, yes. And I really liked, yes, you know, I still wish it would come back.
Yeah, I still have it.
And the Microsoft band, you know, it was
Oh, yeah.
stuff. And I was fascinated with the Windows Store library for optical character recognition. So I've always been very interested in some type of cognitive service. But what I like with Azure, I like that it's remote. I don't have the dependencies on the library. I have some you use the libraries, but you could as well just use the REST API. And there's just so much you can do. Now I use it more for like amateurish things, and that's what I'm going to talk about in this session. How you can get started with the different cognitive services and some things you can use it for. And also expand a little bit and talk about more complex scenarios. But it's just really, really fun to play around with because there is so much you can do. So it's one of my favorite topics to talk about because it's exciting and you get a lot of ideas.
Awesome. And you are going to give us a crash course about it. So. Perfect.
Cool.
Pastor, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
No. I mean, thanks a lot for being here once again. I'm sure everybody will love it. And please go ahead.
Yeah, just let me show a little bit of hellos and buenos días, Jesus.
Hola, Jesus, buenos días.
Also Fausto from Colombia.
Hugo
Viteri, he's now switching to the English and he's saying good morning. Finalmente, Jonathan Martinez, buenos días, saludos. So, without anything else on our side, Iris, please share us your desktop. Let me put it on. How do you prefer to handle the question? You want us to interrupt you during the meeting, or would you like to
interrupt me?
Perfect.
My family is Romanian. We usually interrupt.
Perfect. Yeah, Romania is a little bit close to romantic cultures, right? Like
the language is Latin, which is really interesting because it makes it stand out from the other countries around it. So it's Latin based. So I can read Latin languages such as Spanish and French. But I don't know the words myself, but I recognize them when I see them most of the time.
Perfect.
Correct.
Para la gente que nos está escuchando, si tienes alguna pregunta y no sabes cómo expresarla, ponla en español y nosotros te ayudamos a hacer la traducción. Si nos ayudas a hacerla en inglés, entonces Iris la podrá leer directamente. I was telling them that if they have a little bit of issues writing in English, they can put the question on Spanish and we can help on translating them.
Yeah.
So we will be here on background. And now all the scenario is for you. Thank you so much, Iris, and good luck.
Thank you. So this is a very casual session. So I have no slides. I'll just be using the browser and Visual Studio and a few other programs to talk about Azure Cognitive Services. And as I mentioned in the introduction, I've always been really interested in different types of cognitive services, in particular, optical character recognition. I'll just get in here. Actually, yeah. I'm actually gonna wait. Oh, there we go. So I was early on interested in optical character recognition. Optical character recognition is when you recognize characters from videos or images, any sort of digital source. And what's really interesting is with optical character recognition, it's been around for a long time, but it's been really hard to improve it because there is something that's really difficult to automate is it's learning handwriting because it's so complex and individual and also depends on a lot of factors. But I was really interested in optical character recognition. Back in the days when I did all my Windows Store courses on Pluralsight, I even wrote a book about it. I always had a little section about optical character recognition with the Windows Runtime Library. Now, the Windows Runtime Library was based off the same optical character recognition that you would see in programs such as OneNote. And I'll see if I can just show you an example here. I have my personal OneNote, but I just want to make sure that I don't show you anything, any sensitive information. Well, I'll skip showing you this, but just so you know, if you go to OneNote and you do a search inside it, you can actually search for text within images, which is really fascinating. It just occurred to me, I don't know what to search, but if you have a diagram, like a picture or a screenshot or something, and you pasted it into your in OneNote, you can actually do an OCR search and search for the text. And you can also like right-click on an image and then copy the text from the image, which is really cool. So stuff like that always excited me. I like it. I really like it a lot. And that's how I got started with cognitive services on Azure, because they have, among other things, optical character recognition. They also have a lot of other things that have been really useful for me. So see if I can just find where did I put it here? No, I didn't. I never opened it. I'll just go to Amazon. Oh, there we go. So I wrote a book. It came out in February. It's been going really well. The Unlikely Success of a Copy-Paste Developer. It's a comedy / satire about a software developer, a consultant that will do anything to avoid customer support, even if that means becoming an architect, which Leo really doesn't want to do, but accidentally makes some code available on GitHub and becomes an open source celebrity. And then everything that can go wrong goes wrong. So I wrote this book, and a lot of people are surprised to hear that I actually wrote the book with speech to text, with speech recognition. The thing is, I have 2 kids, and when I started writing the book, I had 1 kid, and Luke, my oldest, 3.5 years old, he just does not sleep. He's always been a really bad sleeper, and even now at almost 4 years old, he will wake up several times a night, and it will take hours to make him sleep. So I was walking with the stroller, the only way to make him sleep. And after a while, I get really bored. I've listened to all the books I want to listen to, all the podcasts, everything. So I just started having these like fun ideas in my head, and I started writing the book with my headphones on using speech recognition. So 90% of the book was written with speech recognition. And when I did the editing with my editor, I used text-to-speech to listen to the changes that the editor made. And it's also a nice way to listen for a sentence that doesn't make sense, or if I forgot punctuation or something like that, it becomes really obvious when you do text-to-speech. So I use speech a lot. So Azure Cognitive Services consists of 5 areas, loosely grouped. It's 5 areas: speech, language, vision, decision, and then also OpenAI. I'm not going to cover OpenAI because I actually don't know much about it. I will learn about it, and once I do, I'll probably do a session talking more about it. But I'm going to skip that for now because I don't want to talk about things I don't know much about. Speech is what I'm going to start talking about first, because I like to talk, as you can hear. And I gave you a few examples what I did. So I'm just going to jump straight into it, and I'm going to show you how easy it is to get started with Azure. And I know there are a lot of examples talking about how easy it is to get started with Azure Cognitive Services. But to be honest, I find that a lot of the samples still aren't plain enough for me. I'd like to see something that is just a few lines of code. And that's what I show you. And the code is also available on GitHub. It's already up on GitHub if you want to see it. Let's see if I can find it. I have so much crap in my repositories. I'm really sorry about it. But let's see. Azure examples. No, that's not it. Oh, I forgot to make it public. I'll log into my into Azure and make sure that the repository is actually public. But it should be here, Azure Cognitive Services, all the examples I show you now, and I'll make it public as soon as I'm done with this session. So let's get started. I'm going to continue now in Visual Studio, and before I do that, I'm just going to show you this. The part I'm going to skip is this, where you create a new service. Whenever I show you something and I say, hey, and now you create a new service, these are the different services that you can find in Azure Cognitive Services: speech service, language service, translator, language understanding, which is the classic one, and then also the Q&A maker, which is the classic one, which means that these ones are on their way out, probably. Although usually they don't say it like that, but yeah. So I'm not going to show you create new because it's pretty straightforward and it takes time to spin up new services, and I don't want to take up time from the session doing that. Whenever you create one and you get to choose which instance or what type you want, F0 is usually the one you want to choose. It'll say in parentheses free, and we definitely want to do use the free ones, and you can get a lot done with the free version. There's always some limitation, file size, number of words, or how many API calls you can do, and so on. So even though I'm using a library, all the things I'm doing here, most of them you can do through either a library, and it supports a variety of different languages. There's usually a library for Java or JavaScript, I don't know, most of them. But everything behind in the background uses REST API. So you can always just use that if you want to. I'm going to use the .NET libraries because they're just so easy to use. So I'm going to talk about speech first. So I was talking about speech to text, which is something I use a lot, and I'll actually show you an example here. And if you have Word, you'll see that in Word you have a dictate here, and you can click on dictate and you can talk. And it's actually in the iPhone application. It's really good, the dictate, because it even has a menu that lets you insert new lines and so on if you don't want to say new line or full stop. But in Office 365, you even have something called transcribe. So what I often do, in particularly if I'm writing dialogue, I'll just be talking and pretending I'm 2 or 3 different people, and I'll create an audio file. And if the audio file doesn't have the right format, I'll use something like Audacity. This is open source, Audacity, highly recommend it. And you can export the file in the WAV file format, which is the one usually Azure wants to work with. So you can do it like that. And once you have the file, you could, for example, go in here. And I actually used this, that we had a conversation at work regarding IPR, intellectual property. It was recorded as a video, and we wanted to go over some of the details, but it's really hard to find the information inside a 2-hour video. So I actually uploaded the audio from the whole video so I could search the document and find the information. So I'm going to go ahead and just select an example. This is a recording I made a while back. Well, a while back. It's 3 days ago. 3 days ago, I actually wrote my third chapter on the second book in the series. And I'm still using speech to text because honestly, I don't type very fast. I've had hand surgery on my right hand, so I don't have the motor skills in two of my fingers required for like the touch method. So I'm just showing you this because this uses the same service that Azure has, the Azure Cognitive Services, the speech service. It's the same thing. And I'll just show you how you can use in Office 365. And as you can see now, it will actually recognize the speakers as well, but there's only one, me. So what I usually do, I go ahead and I just remove the speaker and I say, change all speakers, click OK, they're all gone. And then add to document, and I'll just add just the text to the document. And you'll add punctuation, and I get a lot of extra punctuations because I'm thinking as I'm talking. So then afterwards, I still have to go sort of fix up some of the text. Now, this is very tedious, but this is stuff that you can configure when you use Azure Cognitive Services, which is really cool. But I just wanted to show you this because it's really cool. I like this a lot, and I find it to be fairly accurate. So I'm just going to show you an example here, and I've already recorded here some information, some audio. Sorry, I just forgot. You cannot just double click. Is it just me, or did you know that when you right click on files, I've noticed some of the files here, when you right click on them, you can actually copy the path in Visual Studio. I don't think that was there before. So hopefully you'll hear audio. Let me know if you don't hear the audio.
If James gets to decide, then we'll rewrite this until we retire and the robots take over, using a plethora of hipster libraries he heard about at a user group. It'll be the most performant web shop in the world, but we'll deploy on our deathbed.
So this was an audio. I made like an audio teaser with the voice actor to give an example from the book, if people want to hear how the book was like. So this is the audio I'm feeding in here. So if I go here into the service itself, what I'm doing is I create a speech configuration from subscription, and I provide the key and the region. This is information you'll find once you create the settings. So once you create the service, you'll find the key and the region. That's very straightforward. If you can't find it, you'll find it in documentation. But I'm just going to skip that because it takes time to create the services. And I'm using the audio configuration, and then from what file. You can also have from the microphone input. I could demo that now, but I'm going to skip it for now. And I'll just show you it reading the chapter 7. So this is the only thing I need to do. Once I've done that, I just hit recognize once async. Now, recognize once async will recognize and wait for a pause. And when it hears a pause, it'll stop. It's really good for figuring out like short phrases like turn off the lights or go to page 7 or whatever you want to bake into your application. So obviously, recognize once async wouldn't be what I would be using for using speech to text for a book. But it's the easiest way to get started, to just get an idea for how it works. So I'm just going to go ahead and run this. Right, so this is the text it found. Hopefully you can see this. If James gets to decide, then we'll rewrite this until we retire and it should be and the robots take over using a plethora of hipster libraries he heard about in a user group. And also added an extra punctuation, which shouldn't be there. So it's not completely foolproof out of the box, but still does a fairly good job. Now, this was somewhat cheating because the voice actor is British. So her English was really good. What happens if I do it instead? So here's just a short audio, just one sentence. I'll show you here. It actually, let's see. I don't know why it didn't example. I added this right before the session, and I knew it. Like, if I add something right before the session, it's not gonna work. I'm gonna try to run it again and just see what happens. If not, I'll have to do this live. Oh, there we go. Oh, here we go. So, what do you think? Leo asked Ulrich. Eric looked at Brewer and replied, I don't know. This is actually not what the audio says. The audio is me saying, what do you think? Leo asked Ulrich. Ulrich looked at Brewer and replied, I don't know. So I'm using two Swedish names, which don't really have any like good pronunciation in English. So it becomes a bit problematic. Now, you can actually create your own custom speech model, and I'll get back to that in a second. But one very easy thing I could do is, for example, adding a couple of phrases it should listen to. And here I've just added 3 of the names. So these 2 names, Bror and Ulrik, these are Swedish names. So I'm going to try this again with the phrase added and see if it's a little bit more accurate. So this is something you can use if you're looking for particular phrases that you know that the user is going to say, or if you're like me, you just need a couple of names to get the names right, or a couple of things that you know that the way you pronounce it is not going to be translated well. And as you can see here, what do you think? Leo asked Ulrich. Ulrich looked at Bror and replied, I don't know. So now the translation is much better with just a very, very small change. So I wouldn't use the phrases to customize speech. What I would do, if you want to have a custom model, which you absolutely can do, is you can use custom speech. I actually haven't done this yet, but I'm working on this. The thing is that when you create custom speech, you need to provide it with data. So you provide it with a lot of audio data, and it uses that to train a custom model, and then you get an endpoint that you can use to do the speech to text, and it'll be way more accurate and much better. But you need the data. So right now I'm building up all the data because I never kept the audio files when I wrote the previous book. So this is something I'm going to try, and I'll let you know how it goes. And I'll add some samples and the tutorial on YouTube and some samples in the repository, which I'll make sure is going to be public. So custom speeches, it would be your next step. Now the documentation, where I'm here, I'm going to refer to the documentation quite often. It's very detailed, and you'll find absolutely everything you need. And there is a massive GitHub project with plenty of samples that you can take a look at. All right, so I'm going to continue with speech, and I'm going to talk about text-to-speech, because now we talked about speech-to-text. Text-to-speech is the next step. So I use this in the iPhone application, the Word iPhone application. You just basically, let's see if I have a document here. Okay, so another book I've written is The History of .NET Web Development. It's currently in preview. I need to change a few things, so wait with that one. So you actually have, when you go to the 3 dots in the corner, you have your settings, and there is a read out loud that you can use, and you'll go ahead and and it'll read out loud. You're not gonna hear it when I do it just like that. But that's what I've actually been using a lot to hear when the editor returned with edits, and I want to see how it sounds with edits. I'll use text-to-speech. So let's go to text-to-speech and have a look at that. Right. There we go. This is all the code. So seriously, this is all the code. This is to get started. Obviously, you can do a whole lot more. You want to have error handling and all that. But it's not, they've abstracted away a lot of the complexity, which I really like. So you can actually focus on the stuff that you want to do. So what I do now is I set the output, and you can set the output to your speakers or system output. But I decided I want to have an audio file. And then it will synthesize the audio based on the text. And this is the text, and that's actually the audio, the text the previous audio was based on. If James gets to decide, then we'll rewrite yati yati. So I'm going to go ahead and run this, and voila, it has generated. There we go.
If James gets to decide, then we'll rewrite this until we retire and the robots take over, using a plethora of hipster libraries he heard about at a user group.
So actually, that's pretty good. I don't think that synthesized speech is ever going to sound super natural. I know that Google did this demonstration during one of their big conferences, but I'm pretty sure it was fake, because it usually is when they do demos like that. So that was text-to-speech. Now, the next thing, which is really interesting, is translation service. And if I do a session here again, and if English it doesn't work out, I could, in theory, create an application that just automatically translates everything I say, and it would be way better than whatever is out there, because I could be using custom speech as well. So let's take a look at the translation service. Now, this is a little bit more code because I've chosen to do a little bit of, well, not error handling, but I'm just making sure it actually was able to recognize anything to translate, but it's still not a lot of code. So I'm sorry that it actually uses Peruvian Spanish, because this demo was made for an event that never happened. Or I showed up, but I was the only one there, and the audience was Peruvian. However, Azure has support for a wide array of languages. Here we go. So I just need to find the right Spanish, which is, I mean, I would say there's a lot to choose between, and to be honest, I can't really hear the difference, and I'm not 100% sure what the difference is. I know there is a difference, and I know it is important, but for now, I'm just going to keep it as is. Or actually, I could go ahead and use this one, but I'm going to keep this as is because I'm too scared to change anything in the demo code because something's going to break. So what I'm doing now is here I'm taking the audio from chapter 7, which was the voice actor, and I'm grabbing that one, and then I'm translating it using, see, the recognizer which we used previously. So I hope you see that we're using a lot of the same classes and working the same ways, which means that it's quite easy to combine these different services, at least within speech. So I'm just going ahead and run this. And I cannot verify that the translation is correct. This is what it says. See, James, deceit. And I'm not even going to try because it's just going to sound really horrible.
I'm reading it, and it looks like it's kind of accurate, yeah.
Does the audio work when I play audio?
Yes, it works.
Okay, cool, because now we can hear the audio. So that was text, which is interesting. But here comes the audio. And I'll just say one interesting thing I did. This was way back in the days when this was Bing. It was Bing Speech or Bing Translation. I went to Japan, and I was in Japan for almost a month. And I made an application that you could take a photo of something, and it will use optical character recognition and find the text in the picture, and then it would use translation and read it out loud in English. So I used it in tourist places, on menus, and so on, which was very, very useful. However, I got like the biggest phone bill ever because I had the roaming on. So, all right, so let's. I cannot double click on audio files. Thank you. But now let's see if I actually managed to.
Si James decide, entonces reescribiremos esto hasta que nos jubilemos y los robots se hagan cargo usando una gran cantidad de bibliotecas hipster de las que escuchó hablar en un grupo de usuarios.
Biblioteca hipster.
Wow, yeah.
It didn't work because I find it really interesting to try to use it with a bit abnormal words. So it's, I've done translations with, when I do speech to text and I talk about programming stuff, I always expect it to be worse than it actually ends up because there's a lot of specific terms. But I think it still does a pretty decent job, and this is out of the box because there's a lot of tweaking you can do and you can provide your own model. So this is really good.
Exactly. There is a little pause in the middle that it changes a little bit the main, but again, in general, it's a good translation. So I think
because it does the first thing it does the recognition, and that we saw earlier on when it did the recognition, it added a punctuation that wasn't supposed to be there because the voice actor had to breathe.
Yeah.
It sounded really
Which is kind of
Spanish, though. It's like keeps the library.
Correct. But again, amazing. I mean, this is something.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm just being childish, but I find this stuff so cool.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, so that was speech. I'm going to move on now to language. So what I didn't show you is custom keywords and custom commands, because it's not as exciting as the previous part. And it's just a lot to go through. I don't have the time. So once we're talking about language and text, what is really interesting is when you start analyzing the text that you've grabbed. And there is one thing that you can use is work with entities. So I'm going to talk about entity recognition just very briefly. Azure Cognitive Service, language, entity recognition. So entity recognition, it will look for specific terms, domain-specific terms. And it's really useful. It can be used, for example, I always find this a little bit difficult to explain, but you could use it, for example, I write a blog post or an article, and I wanna choose the tags that the article should have. For example, when you're on Stack Overflow, you have all these tags that you use so people can actually find similar questions for a similar type of topics. And with entity recognition, you could use it for that. For example, there are a lot of other things that you can do. But something I have used entity recognition for is exactly that, figuring out which tags I should use on my blog posts and articles that I write. I'm not sure if this is, well, this one just has the .NET tag, so that's not a good example. But I could run this and it will help me figure out other entities that I can use. And I'm going to show you entity recognition now, and it's very easy to use. And I've actually used the entity recognition. When I've previously done this demo, I've actually used tweets from Russian trolls. This was during the election year when Donald Trump was elected. However, due to the world situation right now, I find it a little bit inappropriate to do that demo. So I'm not going to use it, but using entity recognition on tweets is really, really interesting. Although you probably want to use longer text. So here I'm using a blog post, and I have this blog post. What is MQTT? Because so far I only have one tag, not so stupid questions. It's a category and a tag that I have. It talks about MQTT, which is message queuing telemetry transport, and I definitely should have more tags. So. Oh, sorry. There we go. This is the blog post, and we're going to go to extract entities. I create a text analytics client again with the credentials. So this is a different way to authenticate from the previous examples, but it's still based on the same things basically. You provide an endpoint and you provide the key. It's either endpoint or region they want. Never both, but it's either one of them or the other, and it'll specify which one they want. So I create it, and then I basically just send the document and recognize the entities. This is the out-of-the-box version. So let's see. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and run this. Right, so I haven't grouped the different entities that it finds, and you'll see that some of the things it does really well. It recognizes a mock server as a product, testing as a skill, database as a skill. That's not quite right. With more data, it'll be able to do a better job, and you can send more documents, not just one document like I did. But you can still see it found testing the skill several times. And then it found products. So here are some good tags I could use, because I'm mostly interested in skills and products. And that would be tester, that's definitely a product. And there's PowerShell, that's a product. Open API, that's a product. And API, well, I guess it could be a skill as well. So this is entity recognition. And I don't know if you've ever used AdventureWorks. I started programming 10 years ago, and AdventureWorks, I think, had already been around for like 10 years at least, and it's still around. So AdventureWorks is this fake organization that Microsoft has created. There's a large database with a lot of data that AdventureWorks has. They sell bikes and all type of equipment, and you can use this database to set up a shop or something, or if you want to try new skills and you need data, you can use AdventureWorks. And it was actually able to recognize it as an organization, which I think is pretty cool. So this was entity recognition. Now, another part is, and this is actually new, text summarization. This will take a text and summarize it. And I don't know how new it is, but I'm really excited about this because, as you understand, I am not good at just keeping things short. And also when I write everything as if it was a book, which is good if you're actually writing a book, but it's not good if you're supposed to only write a short blog post or do a short session and stay on time. I just looked at the clock and oops, sorry. So the text summarization will try to create an automated summary. So let's see, I'm just going to make sure book preface. So what this one does, this one uses the preface from my book. Let's see if I have the book here up. There we go. And I'll just show you the preface. Here's the preface. So the preface, it's about 1.5, well, it's 1 page, actually 1 page long. And it's just blah, 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 time passed, and this is what I did, and I'm trying to be funny, and so on. The details are not so important. So it's going to try to summarize this. It's going to be interesting. I've already run the demo before, so I know it's what it's going to say. But it was actually really fun seeing what it thought was important out of all the things that I said there. So it has picked out 3 sentences, and you have a rank score for the summarization sentences that range from 0 to 1, and the higher, the better. And it actually did a fantastic job in summarizing what I said there, because there's a lot of blah, blah, but the most important takeaway from the preface is all the situations, stories, and characters are based on actual happenings, people, and stereotypes. And with a much lower rank score is time passed, and I survived my first year as a parent, you know, and was awarded the day at the spa for my dear husband. So this is actually really interesting, and I'm going to be using this a whole lot more. So that was the summarization. I only added that for fun. Now, another thing which is really interesting, and it was particularly interesting using this with the tweets during the presidential election in the US. I lost a lot of followers that day. I didn't voice my own opinion, but people were just really pissed off when they saw the result, when I analyzed the tweets talking about the election. Now, I'm not using that as an example here, as I explained earlier why. Instead, I've just gone ahead and I've just added reviews. So I added the reviews from the book because I'm not sure who owns the copyright for reviews, and I didn't want to use reviews for another product. So I used the book because I feel confident using that in case, you know, Amazon or Goodreads gets annoyed. So this is sentiment analysis. Is basically you analyze short pieces of text. So you don't do this for long text, shorter text, and analyze the overall sentiment. Is it positive? Is it negative? And it's actually a good way to automatically figure out if people are positive or negative towards, for example, a product or a presidential election. So I analyzed the entities in the tweets alongside with the sentiment. And the result I had, there was a lot of negative sentiments tied to one of the president candidates at the time. And I'm not going to say which one, but I honestly don't think people need to analyze it to sort of figure out the result. Anyway, so I'm using another example, the book. I am very obsessed with my own book. Sorry about that. But so the general, I forgot to print out, but the general consensus was that the reviews are positive, yay for that, and it actually extracts some of the entities or the positive mentions. There's a lot of positive sentiment around reading the book and the book itself, and somebody mentions me by name, and it's something positive, and that is very exciting. I'm pretty sure that was my mom. And fun fact, I didn't ask her to review my book, but she did, and she only gave me 4 stars. So that's my tough Romanian upbringing, right? Never quite 5-star. Never. Love my mom, though. I love my mom. So that was a sentiment analysis. I'm going to move on to vision. And I know I don't have a lot of time left, but unfortunately, one of my examples have stopped working. It worked one day, and then the next day it stopped working. So I believe that they made some changes to the service, and I haven't had the time to figure out why it's not working. I'll explain the example, but I won't be able to go through it. And in the language, I didn't go through question and answering. You can create an automated sort of question and answer bot, and you can use conversational language understanding. And there's also the translator, but I've already shown you the translator. So these are the parts I skipped within this service group. So now we're going to talk about vision. So I'm going to go back here. This is always like my reference point. So in vision, there are 3 main things we're concerned with. It's computer vision, where you analyze content in images and video is just a bunch of images. And then you also have custom vision. And then you have Face API. So let's take a look at vision. So I'm going to use a custom vision example. I'm going to use an image, and I'm actually going to do what I've been talking a lot about. I'm going to do optical character recognition. And what we're going to do is read this note. You remember things better when you write them down by hand. Here's why. In my world, because 90% of my friends are techies like me, software developers, something around that. This is fantastic handwriting, beautiful handwriting, 10 out of 10. My handwriting looks nothing like it. So I use this example because I'm not sure it will be able to even read my handwriting, particularly with my hand injury. But this is what we're going to try to extract the text here. So I'm reading from a local image. In the examples on Azure, you see that it actually uses an example where it reads from an external URL. But I think a lot of the time is you actually want to read something locally. For example, if you let somebody upload a photo and you want to recognize the text and so on. So that's why I've done this example, and it'll be up on GitHub, so you can take a look there, because I saw a lot of people are asking how to do it, and it wasn't easy to find an example. So yeah, you remember things better when you write them down by hand. Here is why. So why would you want to use optical character recognition? Well, the Pluralsight course I did was an example where you take photos of a business card, because those are still around, and it will extract the information from the card, and it would save it as a contact among your contacts, which is pretty cool. It was, however, for Windows Phone, so I guess I can't use that particular application anymore. But I also told you about my tourist application, where you scan a tourist sign or a menu and you have it translated and so on. There's a lot of useful things you can use this for. It has something called also, Azure also has something called a form recognizer. And the form recognizer, it will take a form and recognize even digitally written input as well as handwritten input. It could be something like, for example, you have an event and you want people to fill out some information about themselves, whether or not they approve to photos being taken and so on. These are things that's usually easier to do on paper than to use digitally, because if you have one person with an iPad and people have to line up, that's to sign or fill in information, it's going to take forever. So instead you have paper. Then you have all this paper. What you going to do with it? And this is how, when you fill out customs declarations, when you go to a different country, you usually have a form and you have to write within those little boxes. It uses that because it's fed into a machine that uses optical character recognition to figure out what on earth you're trying to write. So form recognition is also something. It's a service that is under this computer vision service that is really interesting. And there's a whole lot more. Like the examples I give are very simple, but they're also very easy to understand, and that's why I've chosen them. The example that doesn't work is the face API, and it's so annoying that it doesn't work, because the example I had was I'm uploading 2 photos, one of my oldest child and one of my youngest, but when they were the same age. And it recognizes the faces and the emotions, and that's fun. But I also want to see how alike they are, and it actually thinks it's the same person, which I find quite fun, because one is very light and one is very dark. But their features are still very, very similar. The only difference is a slight change in color, because my husband is a redhead and has fair skin. I look very pale under this light, but I have olive skin, I tan very easily, and I have dark hair. So I got one of each with the kids. All right, that's that. There's also custom vision, which works sort of like custom speech. Don't have time to show you that. And let's talk about the decision, the last thing I'm going to cover. So going back to my reference point, here is decision. So you have anomaly detector, content moderator, and personalizer. I'm not going to cover this one because I haven't had time to look at it. I will talk about the anomaly detector and the content moderator. So the anomaly detector, it takes data and it looks at things that stand out, anomalies. And you can do it univariate or multivariate. Univariate means that you have one data set or one data point, and multivariate means that you have several data points. Now, the example I made was actually not a good example, and I'm sorry about that. Here. So I made an example using transactions, my bank transactions for my business account. But then I just realized that the anomalies only make sense for me and not for other people. So I'll just show you the output nonetheless. There we go. So it reads in all the data and then it detects anomalies, and you can adjust how sensitive it is. And it detects a lot of anomalies, and some of these are fake data points I added in, and you can see some very high sums in the negative and the positive range, and also some things that just differ. And it's a really bad example because it's not enough data. You need at least 25 data points, and that's pretty much what I provided, a little bit more, but not nearly as much as you'd like to have. But what I really wish that I have done, and I'll show you this, is use the data from my son. So since my son was born, it's going to be hard to see here. I can see in the corner. I've collected data how he has been sleeping and eating. So the blue parts is sleep and the yellow parts are eating. That was like last week. And what is really interesting, if we look at when he was born, as you can see, he hasn't developed a day routine yet. We discovered around, I'm actually also a licensed dietitian. Before I learned programming, I was personal trainer and a licensed dietitian. And I know a lot about allergies and so on. And I realized that the more my son was awake, the more he was really miserable and crying a lot. And I know my oldest has quite a few allergies, like a long list. I actually was able to see it visually in the app, that it seemed to correlate with what he was eating. He was on formula, he was not breastfed. And we tried different formulas, and we went and we bought this super expensive cow milk protein free, like hypoallergenic formula that's really expensive, and tried it, and then swapped it out with normal formula. And we were actually able to see a difference in his sleep and eating pattern based on that. And that would have been a really good example, which I'm going to create a video and a blog post about that, and see if the anomaly detection, the multivariate, if it can look at the data and predict that something is off with eating. Maybe, you know how children have different leaps at this age, like at specific ranges during life, they undergo a lot of cognitive changes, and usually that means that they sleep worse and they cry more and they eat more or less and so on. If artificial intelligence in the form of anomaly detection was actually baked into this application, other people would be able to, like I did visually, see that something was off. Because otherwise, you just think it was a one-off night and you don't think about it. That's what happened with the oldest one. And it took until he was 2 years old, before he got his diagnosis. And he has egg and milk and all the types of pollen and asthma and, you know, everything that he can have. But he'll probably grow out of it. So the anomaly detection is very easy to use just out of the box if you use a univariate. Now I've set the time granularity here to none, and that is because if you set this to daily, you need to have at least one data point for each day. And I don't have a transaction on my bank account for each day. If I use this application, the data from this application, I could have used the daily time granularity or even finer grained. And then also you set the sensitivity here. If you use univariate, it's going to use the timestamps and the one data point that you provide. If it's multivariate, it'll use more data points. So yeah, that was that. And the last example I'm going to show, since it's already 10 past, it's the moderator. So moderating text is something I honestly don't have a lot of use for. I know that I swear a fair bit, not too much in my opinion, but I do swear once in a while. In Sweden, it's not the big thing, but I know in some countries this is very sensitive. I know I've had issues speaking in the US at conferences because I say words like maybe, oh my God, or something like that. But I did once a podcast with the .NET Core podcast, and I said the word shit a couple of times, which is not a swear word in Sweden at all. Like, it's so common, everybody uses it all the time. But he actually beeped me. So he went like this, and I would say something like, oh, and then everything went to beep, and I thought that was really beep, and it sounded so much worse because they beeped me, because then you mentally just insert the worst swear word you can think about. So maybe I need something like this if I write something targeted at specific culture or a specific scenario, but generally I don't moderate myself. But it's good to know that this exists because, for example, maybe you have an e-commerce system where people can automatically upload comments, and you do the sentiment analysis and entity recognition to analyze what to say, and then you maybe even do some translations and so on. But you also want to make sure that they don't say anything you don't want up on your website. You don't want anything sensitive or insulting and so on, because there's more than just sensitive word like cursing. It could be nudity and other things. So the text moderation has different options, but we're just going to use the screen text. So let's see, the text example I'm using is where I'm talking about Peterborough, and I've actually lived in the UK, and I've lived in Peterborough. So it's going to go ahead and grab the text, and it'll look up in and I can't even say like how big of a database, like a really, really big database, and analyze whether or not it finds something inappropriate. And obviously, you can also yourself say specify. But it found one word, which is shithole, and that's how I describe that city. And it's actually not me describing it. It was an article that voted it to the biggest dump in England in 2019. So sorry, sorry, not sorry, but it's a strange place to live. So that's the content moderator. Now this is a very simple example, but when you actually get the screen result, besides the terms, you can get the text in different formats. Screen result. Hello, did I hit there? So you can have the normalized text. You can have terms, you can have the classification, and also autocorrect text, and a few more other things. So this is the content moderator, and I can see a lot of useful scenarios for businesses. Me personally, I don't really need it. I believe you let me know. So these were the examples I want to show you from Azure Cognitive Services, and I've skipped the personalizer. And I've also skipped the Open API. I'll probably try to squeeze in some examples for this and a separate video, but I don't know enough about this to have it into this particular session quite yet. So if you have questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them. I'm not an expert on Azure Cognitive Services. I've been using it a lot, but I haven't used them for very complex scenarios. I would love to, which I'm discussing with my workplaces. There's a lot of things we could be using it for. But I find it really fascinating, and I'm currently writing getting started type of book about Azure Cognitive Services. So, yeah.
Hi.
Not with speech though. This one is not speech to code. It does not work. I've tried it.
Perfect. We have a couple of comments coming from Carlos. He says that I have had none experience working with Azure Cognitive Services beyond running a few demos, but I find the API is so friendly that they look like using Office Automation API. I don't know if I write it correctly. But he's saying that he has find the API to be so friendly about it. So, and we could see it on your demos, right? I mean,
yeah, it is very friendly. And usually I'm the type of developer that gets annoyed when things are simplified too much, because I find it today, everybody can code because everybody can copy and paste, and that's sort of like the topic of the book, and it's haha, it's funny, but it's also very annoying when you sit there with a solution written by people who just didn't bother understanding what they're actually writing. But in terms of machine learning and artificial intelligence, it needs to be made available more widely. It also needs to be managed, but I'm also worried that if it only is available for a handful of people, those that really, really understand it, and if we didn't have this like easy to interact with it and use it, then only a few people, and that would give them an advantage, and we wouldn't benefit from having input from other people, from other cultures, and and so on. And then we just get the problem with the data being very lacking diversity. And that is something we really see with machine learning in terms of data sets, that For example, the speech recognition, at least in the beginning on the iPhone, when it would do like text prediction and try to predict what you're saying next, and you talked about the doctor, it would say he, you know, because all the data it had was based on very old books. And as you know, historically, women have had a hard time getting books and literature published, and therefore a lot of the data is very skewed. And we also have the problem with that a lot of the data is skewed towards types of cultures, not necessarily just gender, and so on. We had the incident where face recognition would not recognize certain types of faces, which is extremely insulting, and things like that. And that's why I really like that when it becomes available so people can use it and give feedback. But that also means that we have a massive responsibility to be ethical in our use. And I know Microsoft talks a lot about it, and I really hope they mean it and do something about it, because that is the other concerning aspect. For example, for me, it was like when I was using the Face API, I'm okay with using pictures of my children when they're babies, because for me, all babies sort of look the same. They're super cute, but they're very similar, like sweaty little potatoes. But using pictures of my 3-year-old now, I feel a little bit uneasy analyzing his face and his data. So we have a lot of responsibility as well. Whew, monologue over. Okay.
Well, I agree with you. All babies look the same.
Well, before going into some comments, I have a question for you, Iris.
Yeah.
How about cost, prices about the service?
I actually, it's difficult to answer because it depends on which service and the usage as well. So I've done all these demos, and I've been using this to write a whole book, and I still haven't paid anything.
Okay.
So
there is a layer that is free.
Yeah, there's a layer that is free, and it's usually the F0. But it'll say
you mentioned at the beginning, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, and it'll say that in the documentation, and it will also specify the limitations, and it's usually amount of data and number of calls and a few other things. But I also noticed in terms of let's see, cognitive services. Speech to text. Let's see, it had somewhere here. Yeah, here where you can upload the file. I uploaded a massive. I haven't let them know about the bug yet, because I'm not quite sure who to contact in the team. But I uploaded a really big file, and halfway through the file, it said speech recognition completed, and then speech recognition finished, and then it kept processing the file, and I just realized it seems like they don't have a limit on their website. So, because I was able to upload like a 25-minute long audio file, and it started outputting the text. I'm like, I wonder if they want to do this. So whenever you use this demo, whenever you use the services, if you don't want to run out of, if you don't want to hit the limits, make sure to use small files, small audio files, and preferably use tiny audio files instead of from the microphone, because at least it's easier to manage. But if you want to try any of the services without setting up anything, just to see how it works, they usually have here, for example, speech to text, you can upload here, and automatic punctuation or not. And you also have in the Face API, let's just go there. Let's see, Vision, Face API. I think it was here I uploaded. Here I uploaded 2 photos of my sons, and outputted like how the 2 faces belong to the same person. Confidence, I think confidence was 0.84 for my 2 sons. So you can do a lot of things and play around with it. And I think you can also get some data such as it'll try to guess the age and a few other things. I don't remember exactly, but most of the services, you can try them online if you want to just give it a quick try first.
Perfect. Jonathan Martinez has a question. Question is, the recognized characters does work on base to template previously created?
So optical character recognition, it consists of several parts. Oh, I wish I could make a drawing here. But it is based on a lot of like really big data sets, and it creates a model based on the data sets, as you always do with machine learning. But the first thing it usually does, it'll try to separate the characters first, and it usually does that by using a sort of Bayesian filter threshold. I can't remember what it's called, but there are different mathematical calculations that it can use, and it'll try to figure out the best one to use. And with some APIs, you can even select those yourself, and it'll use that to define the boundaries between the characters. Which makes it really difficult if you have the handwriting where it goes as fluently. I forgot what it's called in English. And once it recognizes and separates the characters, it'll try to detect curves and lines, and then it'll use that data and use the model it has previously been created on a lot of data, and it'll try to match on. There's like a very, very simplified explanation, and then there's also like the lexical part of it and a bit more, but at its bare core, what it does, it tries to find the separate characters and then figure out which character it is. That's a very, very simplified. In the Pluralsight course, I go through this a little bit more detailed.
Perfect. Also, you can teach the model, right?
Yes, you can.
Exactly.
And if you're really interested in optical character recognition, there are a lot of free books online, because a lot of the books that are still being used today were written 30, 40 years ago, and they're still valid today, because although a little bit has happened, most that we figured out was actually done a while ago, and we haven't gotten that much further. That's at least what one of the books I read talked about. So there are a lot of free books that you can read, and it's really fascinating, even if you don't have the mathematical understanding. I just skipped those parts because I don't have that deep mathematical understanding, but I was still able to understand the general. Yeah.
Cool. Interesting thing that that information is still accurate or actual on these days.
Yeah, because I mean, 30 or 40 years ago is a good gap of time. Yeah.
Imagine
what we have now is we have more processing power, and we have larger data sets. But some of the problems remain with handwriting, because handwriting is such you need the human intelligence, and that's really hard to translate into artificial intelligence. It's very similar to making sense out of text. You can have artificial intelligence read and make some assumptions, but it's really hard to read sarcasm, and humor in particular is very difficult. So it's sort of the same problems there. There's this human aspect that I'm actually almost a little bit happy it isn't too easy to translate into something artificial, because that means we still have something human left, right? We're not completely replaceable yet.
I have a friend who is a graphologist, and she will be very interested on these kind of things about writing and how we write and that kind of things. Yeah. There's no more question. I don't know if you have any, Pastor.
No, I'm clear regarding everything she shared with us.
I talk about Pluralsight. They have a lot of free trials if you're interested, and if you sign up, they often have like free weekends and stuff like that. And you can always write to them on Twitter and just ask them for free stuff. They're very helpful. Not to watch my courses are quite old, but there's a lot of good courses on Pluralsight, and I highly recommend them. So
perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much. There are some comments more than questions. Jonathan Martinez says, thanks, Iris. Also, Carlos Ivan Chavez, it says, thanks a lot for your info you shared today. Also, John mentioned that this is a video that he will need to get back and review it more in detail because you show a lot of information, which it was good. And also, look who is here, Pastor.
Yeah, Pablo.
Pablito. And he said, gracias por el saludo. Thanks
look, there's a baby.
We congratulated today Pablo because he just got his first MVP.
Oh, yeah,
he shared that yesterday on LinkedIn. Yeah, exactly. Go ahead. Sorry, Jorge.
No, that's the comment that I was going to make. Well, it looks those are all of the comment questions that we have on the chat. If I'm missing someone, please just let me know and we can ask Iris. Iris, while that happens, thank you so much for your time. It was a great conversation. It was a great session. I was very interested about it. Yeah, just to add it, I mean, regionalization is some kind of thing that they need to take care about it. So, for example, for me, when here in America, they use stupid, like your stupid question. For me, it makes a lot of noise in my head because stupid in Mexico is a bad word. So
it's kind of a heavy word. Yeah,
exactly. So regionalization is something that it's difficult to have it on this kind of things. Yeah. Pablito says thanks, guys. No, I don't have any more. Pastor, I don't know if you have anything for Iris.
No. Just thanks a lot, Iris. It was great. I mean, all the information, everything you shared, all your experience. Thanks a lot. We appreciate it. I mean, it's around 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. for you, right?
Oh, no, it's 6:30 p.m.
But it's Saturday,
but it's Saturday, yeah. I mean, thanks a lot for your time. We really appreciate it.
I'm drinking a cider because we're having a barbecue party.
Also, extend our gratitude to your husband. I know he will be with your kids. He's now with your kids. Thank you so much.
The young one is easy, but the oldest one, he's a handful right now.
Definitely. I mean, I've been there, being a community person who's made talks, and we need support from the family. So I recognize the family, and in this case, I think it's the same. I don't know. Is there anything specific for you, Iris? We will be finished in Spanish just to talk about the next webinars and that kind of things. I don't know if you want to add one final comment, something like that.
I just want to say thank you for having me, and yeah,
definitely.
I'll let you know when I do some traveling across the
for sure. Yeah, for sure. There will be some people willing to show some places around.
Thank you very much. I'm going to drop out now, if that's okay.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much, Iris, and looking forward to have you in the future here again.
Would love to. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. Enjoy. Jorge,
listo, Pastor. ¿Cómo viste? ¿Cómo vieron el experimento? Además de que el tema estuvo, a mi parecer, estuvo muy interesante, pero el experimento de tener gente que nos hable, como abrir un poco más nuestras fronteras, sí, sobre todo esa parte de encontrar gente de otros lugares que nos pueda compartir en inglés, es una situación que está ahí. Sabemos que y estamos muy interesados en generar contenido en español y eso es algo en lo que hemos venido trabajando muy fuertemente desde Latino NET, pero creemos que también si abrimos un poco este espacio, no es que vayamos a cambiar todo inglés, sino tener oportunidades de invitar a gente interesante que solamente hable inglés. Platíquenos sobre esta oportunidad que tuvimos el día de hoy ¿Les gustó? ¿No les gustó? Se vale decir que no les gustó también. O sea, es muy interesante. Pero bueno, aprovechando, yo sí quiero volver a hacer el comentario que muchas veces hemos hecho. El hablar el inglés te va a abrir muchas puertas. No es un requerimiento, no es un requisito, no es algo que tienes que hacer, pero si tienes la oportunidad o si ya lo sabes, es algo que te va a abrir las puertas y creo que es una buena oportunidad. Así como nos dice Jonathan, dice, muy bien, el inglés lo necesitamos, perdón, decía acá. Así practicamos nuestro inglés. Creo que es una buena oportunidad de practicar. John Carreón dice, buenísimo, me gusta. El inglés lo necesitamos bastante como devs, por supuesto. Y Fausto dice, muy buena presentación. ¿Qué opinas, Pastor? ¿Qué nos podrías decir?
No. En lo personal, felicidades por la iniciativa, Jorge, ¿verdad, chicos? La iniciativa fue de Jorge y, wow, genial, ¿verdad? Tener a alguien con la experiencia que Iris ha tenido, que es miembro del Board of Directors de la .NET Foundation, que ha sido autora, pues, de cursos en Pluralsight. Es genial, pues, ya a mí me pareció que ella ha compartido cosas que sí, como dice Jorge, bien, lo hemos visto también de otros presentadores, ¿verdad? También de habla hispana. Es abrir un poco las fronteras, nada más eso, ¿ya? Y es bueno interactuar con otras personas, ¿ya? Es muy, muy bueno porque tanto ustedes como nosotros, ¿verdad? En algún momento, en algún evento se la pueden encontrar a Iris, ¿verdad? En alguna charla, ¿verdad? Y pueden interactuar, pues. Yo miré esa plática tuya en Latino NET y ahora estamos en este evento porque nosotros siempre instamos a las personas, ahí está el call for speaker, adelante, compartan lo que ustedes consideren que les gustaría que otras personas escuchen de ustedes, ¿verdad? De su experiencia, de lo que ustedes han ido sumando, ¿verdad? Al aprender. Así que, adelante, gente, adelante.
Y ahora que nos hablas del Call for Speaker, déjenme aprovechar la oportunidad para hablar sobre nuestras redes sociales. Tenemos nuestro Discord, donde estamos teniendo mucha comunicación. También tenemos nuestro Twitter, donde vamos hablando sobre, donde vamos haciendo anuncios, donde vamos compartiendo información del mundo.net. También tenemos nuestro Meetup, donde puedes encontrar nuestras sesiones que estamos teniendo todos los sábados, nuestros webinars. También Facebook, al igual que Twitter, es donde vamos poniendo información de los eventos y de las cosas que están pasando en .NET. Y por último, nuestro canal de YouTube. Si estás aquí, ya estás ahí, pues, pero también compartir nuestro canal de YouTube. Les agradecemos si pueden ayudarnos con su suscripción, si creen que el trabajo que se ha venido haciendo. Estábamos en Conosur, ahora nos regresamos a nuestro canal para que nos ayuden a hacer esa suscripción y la típica, ¿no? Pon tu manita hacia arriba si te gustó el video. Es tipiquísima, ¿no? Bueno, sí. Y esas son las redes sociales. Y por ahí, Pastor nos hablaba también del Call for Speaker. Lo pueden encontrar en la página de latino.net.
Online.
Creo que deberíamos de comenzar siempre con eso, ¿verdad? latinonet.online y en la parte de hasta abajo viene el Call for Speakers, que se lo aventó buenísimo el buen Laucha. A mí me llena la boca.
Bebé de Lautaro.
Sí, me llena la boca hablar de esa aplicación porque le quedó preciosa y súper funcional. Más lo que lleva todo detrás de, ¿no? O sea, tú llenas el Call for Speaker y después viene toda la automatización de generar las sesiones, en fin, muy, muy interesante lo que hizo Lautaro. Muchas felicidades. Amigo, por ahí déjame ver, Lautaro nos compartió las siguientes sesiones, ya están todas en Meetup, ya están configuradas en el canal de YouTube, pero me gustaría ver si los puedo mostrar. Mientras, ayúdame, Pastor. Aquí están.
¿Ya lo encontraste?
Ya lo encontré. Entonces déjame lo bajo para poderles compartir.
Como ya saben, chicos, se estrena con Latino NET, ¿verdad? El gran Pablo Piovano, así que no se la pueden perder esa. ¿Ya? Sí. ¿Ya lo tienes por ahí, amigo?
Ya estoy ahí. Dame un segundo. ¿Dónde quedó?
Y este mes tiene 5 sábados, si mal no estoy. El 2, el 9, el 16, 23 y 30. Es un mes largo.
Correcto, tenemos 2 sábados. 5 sábados, perdón.
5 sábados. Sí.
Ahí voy, denme un segundito. Aquí está.
Por ahí tendremos también algunas cuantas personas que ya han compartido anteriormente, entre ellas Juan José Orozco.
Ya voy.
Y
Share. Esto por acá. Disculpen que no haya estado preparado. Listo. El día de hoy tuvimos a Iris. Próximo sábado vamos a tener a Lautaro. El 16 tendremos a Freddy, que tiene un canal súper interesantísimo. Es de mis principales canales que yo consulto. Al fin lo vamos a tener por acá. Pablo, esperemos que lo tenemos casi hasta el final, entonces esperemos que sí sea el estreno de su MVP. Si no, pues aquí lo tendremos de todos modos. Y terminaremos el mes con Elasticsearch con J.J. Orozco. Entonces, esta es nuestra alineación para el mes de abril y los estaremos esperando todos los sábados. Amigo, ¿algo más que queramos agregar?
No, de mi parte nada más que agradecerles, chicos, ¿verdad? Yo sé que para algunos tal vez un poquito temprano, pero se les agradece. E igualmente, pues, les invitamos siempre a estar no solo de espectadores, sino a participar. Ánimos, adelante.
Excelente. Y bueno, agradecerles a toda la gente que nos estuvo acompañando, gentes, como les dice el buen Lautaro, todas las personas que nos estuvieron acompañando el día de hoy y nos vemos el próximo sábado. Gracias.
Un fuerte abrazo, buen fin de
semana.